Recently, at Raisina Dialogue 2026, General Upendra Dwivedi, Chief of the Army Staff, held a podcast with Harsh V. Pant. When he appeared in this interview format to reflect on Operation Sindoor, the performance felt less like serious strategic introspection and more like an attempt to repair the image of a security establishment under pressure. For months, India's political and military leadership has tried to frame Operation Sindoor as evidence of a bold new doctrine. A doctrine of credible punishment. A doctrine of controlled escalation. A doctrine, in other words, that would allow India to strike, signal resolve, and reshape the regional balance on its own terms. But the problem is this: the battlefield did not clearly validate that claim. Neither did the diplomatic aftermath. And frankly, neither did much of the outside commentary. The army chief appeared to be trying to restore the institution's credibility by announcing multiple organizational changes. Yet these measures seemed abrupt and should be understood not as the product of genuine institutional evolution, but as knee-jerk responses aimed at preserving internal morale. The underlying reality remains unchanged. The Indian Army is under intense pressure to demonstrate performance and restore confidence. Now, one of Dwivedi's central claims was that what he called decisive deterrence was no longer sufficient. India, he argued, had to demonstrate credibility through capability and through the will to wage war. At first glance, that sounds forceful. But look a little more closely, and it carries an uncomfortable implication. It suggests that previous Indian signaling did not work. And more than that, credibility cannot simply be declared after the fact. It cannot be manufactured through rhetoric if the operation itself was inconclusive or worse. If Pakistan's air defense and air combat response imposed real costs, including the reported loss of Indian aircraft, then the claim of restored credibility begins to unravel under its own weight. Then there's a larger claim that Operation Sindoor established a new norm. This is even harder to sustain. What India appears to have wanted was a space for violence below the nuclear threshold, and perhaps even below full conventional war. A space in which it could strike Pakistan, avoid meaningful retaliation, and manage escalation largely by itself. In effect, it looked like a more compressed, more aggressive version of earlier limited war thinking. Punishment without mobilization, compellence without consequence. But that model did not hold. International alarm rose quickly after the strikes, and Donald Trump, whatever one thinks of his theatrics, repeatedly cast himself as someone who intervened to help stop a potentially disastrous conflict. That matters, because the broader point is not about Trump's personality. It's about the strategic outcome. India did not appear to de-escalate fully on its own terms. It was pulled back by the very risks it had unleashed. Dwivedi also leaned heavily on the language of modern military transformation. Synergy, techno-commanders, systems of systems, multi-domain operations. It all had the polished sound of a contemporary defense seminar. But jargon is not strategy. Because if India truly possessed such superior integration, then why did the operation generate so much dispute about losses? Why so much uncertainty over escalation control? Why so little evidence of durable compellence? These are not minor questions. They go to the heart of strategic credibility. A doctrine that sounds sophisticated but fails to deliver clear political outcomes is not necessarily transformation. Sometimes it is just branding. The same issue runs through his discussion of force structure. Integrated battle groups, Rudra formations, drone units, AI, networked warfare, data-centric command systems, all of this was presented as proof that India is adapting. And yes, adaptation matters. Military modernization matters. But the real question is adaptation toward what strategic end? A state can digitize its battlefield, modernize command systems, and still remain trapped inside flawed assumptions. And the core Indian assumption seems unchanged, that Pakistan can be coerced through calibrated force, while China remains a secondary or background complication. Yet Dwivedi's own remarks complicate that picture. He warned of interoperability, intelligence sharing, and the possibility of a two-front challenge. In other words, he acknowledged a more dangerous environment, while still speaking as though India could somehow choreograph escalation to suit its own preferences. That is a contradiction, and a serious one. Even foreign commentary that was broadly sympathetic to India focused less on Indian mastery and more on the dangers of uncontrolled escalation, the uncertainty around damage claims, and the sobering performance of Pakistani air power. That is not what successful coercion looks like. And perhaps the most revealing part of the interview was Dwivedi's frustration over Pakistan's behavior. He suggested that the expected behavioral change had not materialized. But why would it? Pakistan was never likely to accept a doctrine designed to normalize Indian military reprisals under rules defined by India alone. If anything, the harsher reality is this. Any future Indian leadership considering another supposedly limited strike now has to reckon with the possibility of swift retaliation, political costs, and escalation that may not stay within New Delhi's preferred script. And that really is the significance of this interview. Operation Sindoor was not necessarily the birth of an Indian hegemonic order in South Asia. It may instead have been a reminder that military vanity, when dressed up as doctrine, can end in embarrassment.